So wildlife is active at night, and I'm saying this is also about dark skies. So what do dark skies have to do with it? If wildlife is adaptable to the urban environment, what do they care about dark skies? And I thought it was fun to try and make this raccoon watch the aurora borealis. I don't know how effective it is, but I thought it was funny. So let's go back to the beginning of light pollution. What is light pollution or artificial lights at night? Well, that can be categorized in a few different ways. So light pollution is artificial lights at night. And it's really fairly new on the landscape. We went 3.5 billion years without artificial light. And it's only really in the last couple hundred years that we've even had anything that we could call extra light to expand our day, to make our days longer so we can do more things when it's dark outside. And artificial light at night can cause a few issues. So there's a few things called sky glow, light trespass, glare, and visual clutter that we're going to talk about here. And we can kind of see on here all of those little lines showing you kind of where this all is, but what exactly are those things? So sky glow, if you've ever been driving outside of the city coming in, or if you've ever been in an airplane flying over, that like radiance over the city, that's sky glow. And that's also going to be creating some visual clutter. Like when you look at this image, you're seeing a lot going on. It's not, your brain doesn't like it very much if your brain's anything like mine. Mine does not like it. But sky glow is that aura around a lit area that creates that area above it that's not intended to be lit, but definitely is. Light trespass is any light that is going where it's not intended to. So you can see here people's lights on the side of their houses can sometimes go into other people's homes, and that's really annoying for the homeowners on the other side there. And we get that with street lights too. So some people will find that a street light is glaring into their bedroom window. You can get these shields. The city will come and put it on if you do 311 it, but by and large, we're seeing that light trespass is a huge issue for a lot of people. Glare. Well, we've all driven at night. It doesn't even have to be wet outside, but we've all driven at night, and as a car is coming towards you, you like can't see it properly. That's the glare that's coming off of that. If it's wet outside, it's really bad and it's reducing your visibility and it can actually damage your eyes. It can cause an issue where after you're done being out in these lights, you still see them every time you close your eyes. You're still seeing those lights. That's damage that's being done to your eyes by this artificial light from cars. So on a global scale, red is very bright, lots of light pollution. Then we're getting the yellow is also a decent amount of light pollution, and then the green is less, and the blue is even less. And then, of course, those areas that are black do not have light pollution. And we can see, of course, that those more developed areas, as we would expect, have higher levels of light pollution. We can also see that areas in the northern hemisphere that tend to see a lot less light in the winter months, they're also going to have a lot more of that artificial light at night. Oh, and isn't this fun? Look how this coincides with migratory flyways. So all of those lines represent migratory flyways for birds. And we can see that birds are being asked to fly through these incredibly bright areas. Does that matter? Well, we're going to kind of go over that a little bit and discuss whether that matters or not. So on a more local scale, you can see this is, I'm not sure what it is, but astronauts really like to take satellite images of the city of Calgary. So in 2013, somebody on board the space station took this image in 2013. They took another one in 2015 and another one in 2019. One of the reasons they might really like taking pictures of Calgary is because it's been documented as the fifth most light polluted city in the world. There is a whole lot of cities in the world, and we're number five. Edmonton is number six. So, yay, Edmonton. You might be wondering about Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver on there. So, they're more of metropolises. So, they actually weren't included in this analysis as a city per se. So, they actually don't fall on there, but they're not great either. North American cities are by and large not great. So, if I kind of flip back here for a second, on this map on the left-hand side, you can see, if you can see my mouse, I'm not sure, but there's these three little red dots at the top here. Calgary, Red Deer, Edmonton. Pretty darn bright. And then you can see over in Europe as well, you're getting a lot of those really bright lights. But I don't know if we should really be so excited that we can be seen on these light pollution maps like this. So it might look on here on that 2019 one, you might be thinking, well, it looks like we have less lights in 2019. Actually, no. So it actually just marks the shift from yellow sodium lights, high pressure sodium lights, to LED lights, which actually have more blue. And when we're talking about light pollution, there's different spectrums that will reflect more into the atmosphere. Yellow is what we call a warm color, and it does not disperse into the atmosphere as far as, say, white or blue. So even though it looks like there's less light on that 2019 image, there is in fact more, and it's getting more and more. Unfortunately, I have not seen anything in the last 5, 6 years for an updated image that shows us the west side of the ring road. But if you were to see the ring road, you can see that orange in part of the city, and then it goes up to the yellow or yellow white all the way up in the northeast part of the city. That's the ring road. And now that whole thing is complete. So it's going all around the city with all of those lights. And there was opportunity for the builders to put in more efficient and wildlife friendly lights on the ring road. Unfortunately, that did not happen. So what we're left with is a lot of light pollution. So if we look in the Weaselhead, this is a fantastic image taken by our President Eve. And we can see in the side, we see on one side it's beautiful and it's dark, and look at all those beautiful stars. Then we pan over and oh, there's a lot of light over there. And you can see that sky glow. So if you compare the one side where it's nice and dark to the other side where it's a little bit brighter, that is sky glow. And then those lights are very clearly trespassing into the Weaselhead. And that's going to affect how wildlife use this area. So, scotobiology is the study of biological systems that are affected by darkness, or systems that are prevented or inhibiting from operating by unwanted light. By now, we've probably all heard some of the effects on ourselves, but what is less known is how much artificial light affects other beings. So, whether it's plants or whether it's animals or microorganisms, anything, everything is affected by light. And some of those effects can be on both behavioral scales and hormonal scales. You can have disrupted circadian rhythms, you can have changes in the time of seasonal adaptations, disrupted feeding behavior and distribution, changes to migration, changes in breeding behavior and timing. And this is not exclusive to humans or non-humans. It's everybody. It's across the board. So again, for about 3.5 billion years, sun went up, sun went down. That was our light cycle. And every single living thing on this planet adapted to light goes up, light goes down. Our whole, everything within us, all of our cells have adapted to that cycle. And then we introduced artificial light. So we're really throwing a loop into our systems and how everything is working for us and for everything around us. So let's just look at a couple of examples. So disrupted feeding behavior and movement. So artificial light at night mimics the effects of a full moon every night. And some animals, like moths, as we saw in that last image, are drawn towards artificial lights, while others tend to like to avoid it, like mice. But what if there's a food reward in that light? So moths, we now know, will come to the light not for food, of course, but because they orient themselves by the moon. And they actually are trying to shift themselves in a way so that they feel that they're oriented correctly to the moon. And of course, it's not happening. So they're just spinning in circles. But other wildlife also thinks it's the moon, but it might be advantageous for them. So an owl can hunt more easily when it's light out, and mice tend to avoid that light because they don't want to get eaten. But if there's a food reward, like nice green grass, they might be lured into that area. And we tend to see more greening up or delayed dormancy in a lot of plants that are next to artificial lights. So a mice might be drawn to a roadside where you see that green up a little bit faster thanks to those artificial lights coming down. And that in turn might draw an owl closer to the road. So now we've risked both of these lives here. So the mouse is going to come out to eat all that beautiful grass, and the owl is going to come out to eat the mouse. And owls, one of the biggest causes of death for great horned owls, and I hate to say I just found one yesterday, is being hit by a vehicle. And they get hit by vehicles and they die on the side of the road. And this is in large part because along those ditches, those animals have come, and some of that is because of the artificial light that is drawing them there. And this can play out on a bigger scale as well. So I love, love, love these two images of the bobcat and the cougar because This is the exact same camera, and these two cats are in like the exact same position, only a few days apart too. So you can see that bobcat was there in March 16th, 2024, and that cougar was there on March 18th. So literally 2 days apart, exact same position on the same trail. I love it. But both of these cats will spend some time in the Weaselhead, and they're going to be there to eat a lot of things. And we know that bobcats, when there is a lot of artificial light, they seek out more vegetation. So they prefer to be in vegetative cover if they can with artificial light. And cougars are the same way. They don't like to be in the spotlight, so to speak. So if there's a lot of light, they will find those edges where the light is missing to travel through. In the Weaselhead as it stands, it's beautiful and dark in there, so they have that opportunity to move a little bit more out in the open. Their prey might also have that same thought. They might know that their predators are more likely to come after them if it's super dark, and they might be drawn more to those light areas. So we might see our bunnies coming closer to lit areas, as well as our deer. Now, that could be a road or that could be a neighborhood. And if we're drawing in these deer and these bunnies into the neighborhood where they might feel that false sense of safety by being in a more well-lit area, they run an increased risk of being hit by cars, or their predators may also venture in if they have to. So as long as there's abundant prey in a natural area, they're probably going to stick to that area, unless you're a bobcat who just kind of navigates everywhere. But they want that vegetation. And if they have that extra light, they're going to be navigating around in a way that's going to help them hunt, and that might draw them into these more urban areas and create more conflict with people. And same with deer. Of course, we run the risk of animal vehicle collisions for deer as well. What about birds? Let's take a second and talk about birds in the Weaselhead. There's a lot of birds in the Weaselhead, and there's been at least 130 species documented just in the Weaselhead. So that's not Glenmore Park either. That's just the Weaselhead on iNaturalist. That's phenomenal. And that includes this great blue heron, which one of our naturalists, Kaya, took this picture. And it also includes everything from hummingbirds. We have calliope hummingbirds that breed in the park. Waterfowl, raptors, we get eagles, we get owls, we get hawks, all of the things. Shorebirds, we've got lots of little killdeer, we've got lots of little yellowlegs, all kinds of fun shorebirds, and tons of songbirds. It's a great place to come and listen to songbirds. But light affects them, and there's no doubt about it. So it can affect them in a bunch of different ways. As we saw on that image, that flyway map really shows you that all of those lit areas kind of correspond with where birds are flying as well. And Calgary is kind of on the cusp of two different flyways, the Pacific and the Central Flyway. We are not the busiest spot. If you were to go out to Eastern Canada, you're going to find a lot more birds moving through. But we do have a lot of birds that move through here, particularly in fall migration after all of the young of the year have been born. We've got naive flyers coming through. They don't know where they're going, and light pollution can really throw a wrench in it. We know that birds navigate by a few different things. So they navigate by using the stars. They can navigate using some speculation on magnetic fields. We're not really sure how true that is on that. There's not a ton of evidence to back that one up yet. And they navigate by the sun as well. So the horizon is also a big one for them. So you can imagine if there's that big sky glow, that can mimic the horizon and can draw them into an area where they didn't mean to be. It can also alter when they migrate, the food availability they have, their route, and what risks are encountered. Now, here's an image of the Tribute in Lights in New York City. This thing is a phenomenal, phenomenal thing. It actually projects light roughly 6 to 7 kilometers in the air. Birds tend to migrate between 1 and 3 kilometers in the air. So they're not above this light, they are very much within it. And they have found that when they turn on those lights, within 15 minutes in a 500-meter radius, you can attract upwards of 15,000 birds. 20 minutes. That's phenomenal to me, how quickly they are drawn in. And you can see all those little specks in there. Those are all birds in there. Luckily, they've also found that the same works in reverse. So if you turn off those lights for 20 minutes, you can actually have these birds move on within that time period. And so it took a lot of citizen science and a lot of people watching for years, about 7 years, I think this study went on, to see how they could help these birds that were getting caught up in this light and getting exhausted, because just like that moth, they're confused in that light and they're spinning around and around until they just drop from exhaustion. And so they've actually come up with an awesome solution. Turn off the lights for 20 minutes, then turn them back on, and it seems to clear the air. So it can also change their timing. So if there's a lot of light, it may trick them in the springtime in particular to start migrating early because that circadian rhythm, when there's more light during the day, you want to start moving to your breeding habitat. And that can have fallback effects on their food availability because there may be a mismatch there. Their food might not be available yet because temperature has not allowed those insects to come out yet, but they're here, they're ready to eat them all, and there's nothing for them. And again, it can change that route as well. So if we look at Calgary one more time at night, that's a lot of light. And you can see that sky glow in there, and you can see all of those lights on the buildings. It's important to note, window strikes are definitely a real risk. 99% of window strikes happen in residential areas, not in downtown buildings. That's no small feat. 1% is still a lot. But these downtown buildings are drawing in the birds. So they might not necessarily be hitting these buildings, but they're being drawn in by the sky glow created by all of that light. And when you get a bunch of naive flyers in the fall coming through, they don't know where they're going. They get disoriented and they come in. So as much as possible, we want to have those dark areas available for them. And that brings us to our nocturnal sanctuary project. So the Weaselhead Glenmore Park Preservation Society thinks that the Weaselhead is a pretty awesome place. And we think that the darkness that's there now is really supporting a lot of wildlife, and we want to keep it that way. So the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada has a dark sky sites program. And the purpose of this program is to recognize sites that contribute to the reduction of light pollution. It educates the public about dark skies and allows for that liaison between municipalities and these dark sky preserves or urban sky parks that we'll talk about in a second. It also increases public awareness of the impacts of light pollution, and it's a way to expand Canada's network of sites that protect dark skies and the nocturnal environment. Now, as you can imagine, the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, originally this was designed for astronomers to see the night sky better. And in Weaselhead, we want astronomers to be able to use the area, but we want it for something else as well. So there's a couple of designations that already exist. There are dark sky preserves, where artificial lighting is very limited and strictly controlled. There's public education programs, outreach with surrounding municipalities and communities, and there's also public nighttime access. So if you go south of Calgary, you can find Anne and Sandy Cross Conservation Area is a dark sky preserve. And I thought it was the coolest thing the first time I was driving down what was 22X. It still is, I think. And it said, "You are now in dark sky country." And I was like, what is that? And I looked it up because I was curious. And then I started to learn all about these programs and see how amazing this really is. And you can see that it's really increasing the amount of night sky that we can see. There's also a designation called an urban star park. So that's again where artificial lighting is strictly controlled. There's easy public access. We have public education programs related to the night sky, nocturnal environment, and light pollution abatement. There's outreach with municipalities and communities to promote the reduction of light pollution, and it allows for those brighter skies. We at the Weaselhead wanted to be one of these two designations, but it just wasn't fitting because of the urban environment that we're in and because of some of the restrictions that we find ourselves with. These designations were not going to work for us. So RASC has been pretty amazing working with us on a new designation, and that's the Nocturnal Sanctuary. And that is kind of a little bit more focused on ecology and biodiversity of the nocturnal environment, supporting all of those natural functions of wild animals and plants. There still has to be that compliance to the Royal Astronomical Society lighting protocols to minimize the impact of artificial light. We still have to liaise with those surrounding communities and the municipalities around us. And there's still going to be that public outreach and promotion of light pollution abatement, but it's not necessarily as strict as the other two designations, and it definitely provides more on the ecology and biodiversity protection. So this aligns beautifully with what we're seeing with our results from Calgary Connect. We are seeing that wildlife is using the park at night when people are not around, and we're seeing that there is a lot of wildlife in the park. So we now have an opportunity to enhance that and make this a permanently dark sky area. So if you happen to live near the park, we would encourage you to always be doing this, but we encourage you no matter where you are because there's a ton of effects from artificial light no matter where you are. So turn off those lights. If you don't need them, turn them off. Indoor and outdoor lights. Every single one of those lights is going to have an effect on you and the critters that are outside of your windows as well. A great way to go is also installing motion sensor lights. There is this illusion that more lights mean less crime. That is, in fact, the opposite of what we see. So it turns out the criminals also like light, and so when it's darker, there's less crime activity. And a lot of criminal activity, so break-ins that we're concerned about with keeping our nighttime lights on, those actually occur more during the day when people aren't home. And so we want to shift that paradox of thinking that more lights means less crime. It's actually going to be the opposite. Turn off those lights and you will see less. Installing those motion sensor lights also creates that element of surprise for any wildlife that might come into your area or also for criminals as well. You also want to face those outdoor lights downwards to prevent that light trespass and the sky glow. So you can see in these images, we've got the problematic lighting that's just glowing up the entire world around it, and then we face it just right down. And then using warmer colored lights. So again, those blues and those white lights, we've all heard the danger of blue light on our screens and how we want to turn that off at night. An LED light uses the same light spectrum. So you're having the white and the blue lights in those higher LED lights that we are all installing now. So if you can shift it over to warmer colors, reds, yellows, even greens are better. I actually saw something cool today where there is a municipality shifting to red lights in their street lights to help bats because bats are less sensitive to the red spectrum than they are to the white. So it is possible to make these shifts. Just takes us being aware of it and understanding the impact that we're having when we don't do these things. And so that brings me to the end. If you would like more information, there is so much more available out there. I will be doing a guided hike in the Weaselhead on March 15th, where you're more than welcome to come and see more about our cameras and learn about coexistence with wildlife, how they coexist with us, and how we can coexist with them. You can go to the Mistaki Institute to learn more about Calgary Connect and see the full 5-year report. It's a big report, but there is tons of awesome information in there. You can also visit the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada's website to learn more about the dark sky designations and also the really cool programs that they have going. I've learned so much from Roland, who's watching this today. I've learned so much from him about all of the different events that are happening and actually made me pay attention more to the night sky than I would have otherwise. You can also learn more at the International Dark Sky Association, the Alberta Dark Sky Association, and of course, our very own Weaselhead Glenmore Park Preservation Society website.